Hello. Today we are going to be looking at the Bootstrap 4 progress bar. So what is the point of the Bootstrap 4 progress bar? This component is used to visually display the completion of a task or process in the form of a bar. In my opinion, it's a little more visually engaging than simply displaying 22 out of 100 or 22%. Some possible uses for this component could include survey completion, so like how far along you are on a survey or like an order form. You see it in video games like an experience bar or how many more zombies do you need to kill to level up. You could even use it for a timer. Say like you have 5 minutes to complete this online purchase, or the progress bar will run out. And so one consideration I'd like to make before we jump into the code is, why don't we use the HTML5 progress element? And the reason being is because although this is probably the more semantic way of doing it, there are some limitations, such as not being able to stack multiple progress bars, not being able to animate them, and not being able to place text labels over the progress bars. So all of these considerations considered, Bootstrap decided to use just a plain old div. Anyhow, so let's jump into the code and take a look. So right here is a progress bar. So as you see, we have this outer div, which has a class of progress. So this outer div represents the maximum completion of the progress bar. And then you have this inner div here, which represents the current value of the progress bar. So this has to have the class of progress bar. So here we have a roll of progress bar and then some area elements. And basically all of these elements here are all just for accessibility technology, to understand what it's basically looking at. Because otherwise, it's hard for a computer to tell what a progress bar is, but here we're telling it, hey, this is a progress bar. The area value now is the current value of the progress bar. The value min is the minimum value, and the value max is the maximum value. Make that 100. So we're saying this is a progress bar that can go between 0 to 100, and the current value is 0. So I'm going to save this and go back to the browser. So if you take a look now, we have this empty progress bar here. It's pretty great. So I'm just going to copy this, and we're going to add some progress to our task here. We've gotten started on the tutorial. I'd say we're probably about 25% done. Cool. So I'm going to save that, and let's go back. Wow, nothing happened. Why is that? Well, as I was saying before, these area values are actually just for the screen readers to be able to understand what it's looking at. The way we can actually indicate progress is to add an inline style. So we're going to add an inline style of width equals 25%. So if we go back now, there you go. We have 25% completion towards the end of our task. All right, so how can we customize this progress bar? So I'm just going to copy this, bring it down here. The first thing we want to do is to add a label over our progress bar to indicate what it is. So in this case, we'll say 25% completed. And the way we do this is here in the inner div, you just type what you want the label to say. So we'll say 25% complete. So now if you go back to the browser, you have this label now over the progress bar telling you that it's 25% complete. Cool. What if you want to change the height of the progress bar? So we have one consideration here for this example. I'm going to copy this just to make this point. We're getting a little further along in our tutorial here. We'll say we're 40% along. Cool. We're now 40% complete. So how do you change the height? Well, contrary to the Bootstrap 4 documentation, which says to add an inline style to the outer div, I found that didn't really work for me. So what I found was here, if you add an inline style here, We'll say this is 50 pixels, height 50 pixels. Now if we go back, you see you have a 50 pixel high progress bar. And the consideration I was talking about earlier was now you see the label doesn't really fit into this progress bar properly anymore. So I figured that would be something that would be baked right into this component. But one simple fix would just be adding an inline style here. You just say, font size, we'll make that 2em, and line height, make that 2em. So cool. You go back now, and there you go. The label fits better in the bar. That's just one workaround for that issue. Okay, cool. So now, how will we change the background color of these progress bars? I'm just going to copy this this example from earlier here, paste that in here. So Bootstrap actually has some background color utilities which we are going to use. So all you do is in here on the class of the inner div, just add bg, we'll add bg info. So now if we go back, cool, now we have this, we're not going backwards, we'll make this 50. Cool. But yeah, as you see, we have this light blue progress bar now. What if you wanted to add a custom background color? So we'll get rid of this bg info here. And I've added a CSS rule here. So basically what it's saying is for the 5th progress div with, the 5th progress bar within the progress div, we're going to change the background color to purple. So now if you go back to the browser, we have this purple progress bar here. Now, there's a few things we can do to kind of make our progress bar a little more interesting. I'm just going to copy it down here. So one thing we could do is to actually make it striped. And all you need to do for this is add an additional class here, progress bar striped. If you go back now, awesome, now you have this cool striped progress bar. And it actually also supports animating the progress bars. So we're going to copy this one, bring it back down, and I'd say we're nearing completion of this tutorial, so we'll say 75. No, we'll make it 80% done. Cool. We're 80% out of 100. And we want this to be striped, so all you do is add an additional class here, progress bar, we want it to be animated, progress bar animated. Now if you go back to the browser, you'll see, awesome, now we have this animated progress bar here. And let's just change the color of it, make it a little more interesting. BG info. There you go, you have this animated stripe progress bar here. And the way this is actually working is using CSS transitions, which is pretty safe across most modern browsers. The only issue is it is not supported by Opera 12. But other than that, you're going to have good support across all your browsers, which is good. Okay, so we have finally made it to the last thing I want to show you here, and that is multiple progress bars. So I just copied the first one. So basically, all we need to do now to add multiple progress bars is basically just copy this inner div and just have multiple progress bar divs within the same inner div. So we'll say the first one, we'll let it be 25% and keep the area value now at 25. The next one, we'll change the background color. We'll make it that light blue. We'll say this one is 13%. And change that. And then the next one we'll make green. And we'll say this one is 50%. Alright, let's take a look at that. And there you go. Now you have multiple progress bars within the same bar. And you might say, hey, how practical is this really? Well, There is probably some uses for it. For example, you could say this is, 10 or 25% MP3, 10% images, and 50% audio, So I'm sure you could find a usage for it out there. But anyways, there you go. There's our tutorial on the Bootstrap 4 progress bar. I hope you enjoyed, and have a good one.